Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the H Panel, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Cindy Villanueva. Cindy is a 7th degree black belt master instructor, an entrepreneur, a professor, and the author of the new book, Don't Fight Mad, A Black Belt's Quest to Recapture Joy. Cindy uses stories and previous experiences to inspire and engage her clients, and she has a real passion for helping women achieve lives of strength and joy. Before we get too into this episode, my HD camera did not work for this episode. I know, I goofed up, I'm sorry. So it's a little low quality on my end, but the conversation and the audio is still great. That's just an FYI if you're on YouTube. And I wanted to thank Cindy again for coming on and having this discussion with me. It was a lot of fun, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. Before we get started here, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on a podcast platform, and share with someone who might need to hear this episode. I appreciate all of you, and I'll talk to you very soon. Peace. I'm Harry Potvin, and this is the H Panel. We are live. Cindy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Before we get too into anything, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So,
Sure.
you're a black belt master, an entrepreneur, an author, all these things. What kind of got you started to get into all these lanes of work?
Oh my goodness. So martial arts, I'll start there. I started in martial arts in 1994. And the reason I started was because my kids were doing it. My daughter was 13 at the time. She'd gotten into this little pushing girl fight at school, and my parents flipped out and they said, "Oh my gosh, the kids need to know how to protect themselves. If you'll find a good martial arts school, we'll pay for the first year." I said, "Okay, well, that'd be something fun for the kids to do." She was 13 and the boys were 10 and 8. And so I started looking around, and this is back in California. I was born and raised in San Jose, so Silicon Valley. And so I started looking around at different martial arts schools and found the Ernie Reyes West Coast organization. And they had, at that point, there were probably 25 schools maybe. And the one that I found was just great. And they really stressed self-respect and good decision making, leadership, not just kicking and punching. And so I signed the kids up, and I would sit on the sidelines with all the other moms, and we'd watch classes. And there was one instructor who kept coming up to me and saying, "You want to get out here." And I was like, "Nah, I'm too old. I'm out of shape. I'm a mom." But we would go home and we would move the furniture so there'd be enough room in the front room, and they'd teach me, their moves. And so I knew the whole curriculum up to like green belt before I ever even set foot on the mat. And then when they were probably purple belts, so like intermediates, we went to watch a black belt test. And back in those days, they would have, everybody would come together at the San Jose Civic Auditorium, and it was a big deal. There's a couple thousand people in the stands, and you're watching people, test for black belt. And I saw other women in their 30s who were doing this. And I thought, I've been an athlete all my life. I was a competitive swimmer. We talked about that. And I thought, you know what, darn it, I'm going to do it. And so the next Monday, I went in and signed up. And that was, I think, like July of 1994. And so that was the genesis. I never in a million years really thought about getting a black belt or, getting my master instructor degree and owning a school and all of that. So that was a little bit of a surprise, zig when I thought I was zagging. As far as being an author, I have loved stories since I was a little girl. I can remember making up stuff when I was like, kindergarten, first grade, and I would make up these stories and I would act them out in front of my parents, and I would get my little brother along and he'd be like, "Oh, okay, do whatever my big sister says." But yeah, I was always fascinated with storytelling. The interesting thing is that I went into the writing part of storytelling where my brother actually went into acting, and he did community theater, and for a while he was a he was a teacher at a high school teaching drama. So we both have been, really into stories. And then as far as the marketing work, that really, I just sort of fell into it. I always thought that I was going to be an attorney and that one day I would be a California senator. I was going to major in political science. I had always been super interested in politics, and I talk in the new book about going off to UCLA my freshman year, thinking this is what I'm going to do. I have the whole thing mapped out, and ended up getting pregnant my freshman year in college, dropped out of school, and my life, took a hard turn. And I sort of fell into marketing, but then found that I was really good at it and I really enjoyed it. And it's all about stories. So it worked out. So I had my daughter, ended up having 3 boys after that. So got a whole passel of them and never thought I would have kids at all.
You get the whole package, holy.
Whole package.
That's awesome. Isn't it weird how life works like that, where you're trying to zig, but like you said, you get zagged instead?
So true. So true.
Did you find that your competitive swimming, because I see a lot of similarities here, but like with myself, but did you find that competitive swimming helped with martial arts in a way?
It really does because, with competitive swimming, you're an individual, but you're also on a team. And so you have to have sort of both sides of your brain engaged. You're always trying to do your best in your particular events, but you're part of a swim team and you may be on a relay or something like that where you have to collaborate with other people. And it's the kind of same thing in martial arts. I'm competing by myself, but I'm representing my school and the other students that I work with. And especially now that I own my own school, it's definitely a team and a family orientation.
Yeah, 100%. I love the whole, because I was always a fan of team sports, but obviously individual sports was like the thing.
Yeah.
So going into Muay Thai was a little different for me in terms of like movements and different muscle groups, but in terms of individuality, it was like, yeah, I've got this. I've done this before. I can train in my own little corner.
Yeah, yeah, you got it, exactly.
I love it. So I was looking at your website and about you, and you have this thing called the want to lifestyle.
Mhm.
So what is that want to lifestyle?
Yeah, great question. So, I think that we all start off with this set of expectations, and I call them the have tos. You have to go to school, you have to get good grades, you have to get a good job, maybe you have to get married, you have the 2.1 kids, you've got all the have tos. And I spent a long time in my life on the have tos. And at some point, you have to stop and think, how much of my life is want tos? And I got to a point where very, very little of my life was want to. It was all about have tos. And so I did a real serious audit of my life. And one of the things that I do with clients that I work with is I have them do an inventory of a whole week. Now, if you can't do that much time, do 3 or 4 days. Make sure that one of those days is a weekend. And then you list out everything that you did and be really thorough. This isn't like a 5-minute exercise. This is going to take a couple of hours. And I always recommend, get away, get some quiet time, get a cup of coffee, sit someplace you're not going to be bothered, and list out the things. And it can be even, I did laundry, I paid bills, I worked on a project for a client, whatever. And you list out all the things that you did. And then you start assigning value to them, but with no judgment. So the first thing, you're just kind of collecting data. So you're going to look at each of those items and you're going to say, as I was doing that, did I like lose track of time or was I like, oh, it's only been 5 minutes, And then you're going to think about, can you map that task to a bigger picture? So, for example, at my studio, if I'm going over the P&L, I'm looking at the payroll, I'm looking at that stuff, I'm just like, oh, I'm not a finance person. This is not my deal. But I can map it to something that's bigger, that I want my studio to be successful. And that as a responsible business owner, I need to know my way around this stuff. And then you think about how you felt when you did that thing. If I'm scrubbing toilets, I'm looking at the time. I don't see a bigger picture. I'm not crazy about this. It just has to be done, so I'm doing it. And so you start evaluating all those things, and you'll start to see trends. And for a lot of us, we just get started on life and we just power through. We don't take the time to sit back and really assess it. And so, what I ask people to do is look at that without judging it, thinking, oh gosh, why am I spending all this time on things I don't like or whatever? Don't judge at all. Just start looking for trends and start seeing the things that really light you up, the things that really, really excite you. And maybe what you find is that the career that you're in is a have to, it's not a want to. When I finally decided to live that want to life, I started looking at where I lived, what I spent my time on, how I spent my money. All of those things came together, and I started thinking about what is it that I really want to do? What's the stuff that lights me up? What lights me up is writing, it's speaking, working with my students. I also am an adjunct professor at Concordia University in Texas, and I teach online. This semester, I'm teaching consumer marketing, but I also teach leadership in the community in the MBA program. That's the stuff I love. I love working with students, and I love being at the beach.
Mm.
I grew up in California. We were at the beach constantly. My mom used to laugh that my dad and I both had salt water in our veins. And so a few years ago, my daughter and her husband moved to Texas. I'm sorry, to Florida from Texas. And I came out to visit them, and I just fell in love with this little village where they live. It reminded me of my favorite beach back home in California. And so I started thinking about, what do I could I do this? My studio is in Texas, but my heart says I want to be here. And so I sat down and really, really figured out how to get this want to life. And so I sold my house in Texas. I bought a place. I literally 2 minutes takes me to walk across the street to the beach. And it's it's nomadic, and it's not for everyone, but it's a want to for me. And so I'm able to be here. I go to Texas typically every month. I mean, with COVID, it's been a little bit different, and obviously with the snow and stuff, it's been different the last few weeks. But normally, I'm in Texas, maybe 50% of the time, and when I'm there, I actually stay at my best friend's house. We've been best friends since we were 11. She has a spare bedroom that she saves for me, and I live at her place when I'm in Texas, and then when I'm in Florida, I'm at home. And my sons actually live here in the house in Florida, and sort of are property managers. They take care of the house and the dogs and all that kind of stuff. But I have a place that is a respite for me. It's really so fabulous to be able to be out here. So it's deciding what are the things that really truly bring you joy, and then being willing to make some sacrifices, because honestly, sleeping in my best friend's spare room, I'm not 19, so you do give up some things in order to have the things that you really want. But I think it starts with making it a priority.
Hmm. I love that. I love what you said about like you mentioned you have to make sacrifices because a lot of people who have this not have this want to lifestyle but kind of promote it
Mhm.
don't really tell you about the sacrifices you have to make or the hard work. They're like, just think about it, manifest it. And it's like, well, that's one part of it, but you also have to work hard. So I love what you said about that because it's so true.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Everything I mean, I grew up, my dad was a migrant farm worker. He came from Mexico. I mean, if you've ever seen pictures in Mexico of the hillsides with the cardboard and the corrugated metal little shanties, and I mean, that's how my dad grew up when they weren't in the labor camps in California. I grew up with a sense of, work ethic, and you get stuff done and you do your very best, and all of that. So I'm no stranger to sacrifice, but you can take it so far that you're just fixated on, duty and obligation and have to. And there is a way to take those skills and that grit of, the things that need to get done and coupling them with things that just completely light you up. And I think you're absolutely right. Having the notion that, just live your best life, is not terribly helpful to a lot of people, because then they think, well, what's wrong with me? I'm not living my best life. Well, you know what? You kind of got to roll up your sleeves a little bit. You have to, first of all, commit to it, believe that you deserve it, do the hard work to figure out what that actually would look like, and then being willing to make some sacrifices to get it.
Hmm. Yeah, I was asking someone like another life coach. I don't remember her name, but I was asking like how do I get to this lifestyle that she's talking about? She's like, just imagine you can. I'm like, okay, like come on now. Like I'm not just gonna sit here and think this will happen and it's gonna. I don't know. I believe in manifestation to a point.
You're
I
right.
do believe you have to work to get there, but if you do think about it, like given you're in a good life circumstance, but I do believe you can get there with hard work and manifestation. I don't think it's just one or the other.
Yeah.
Something you said actually hit a heartstring when you were talking about like when you're working and cleaning toilets looking at the time, because that's what I did all summer during the pandemic. uh, I got redeployed. I think I told you I got redeployed from being a camp counselor to being a custodian because of the whole pandemic. And
Yeah.
every day it was just like when am I gonna, like, 8 to 10 hour days, like when am I done here? I don't want to clean any more toilets. People are screaming at me telling me that I'm a piece of shit. Like I'm like, can I just go home? Like, that was definitely a have to. It
Yeah.
wasn't a want to.
Oh, that's miserable. That is miserable.
Oh man. Yeah, it's like this. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. There's this like whole thing now. Well, there's always been this whole thing, sorry, and we're kind of rewiring it, but you grow up, you go to school, you get a job right out of school, you work hard your whole life, you do what you have to do, and then you can be happy when you retire.
Yeah.
That's been the whole idea for so many, like growing up, that's all I thought about. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do the dirty work and be miserable until I'm like 80, and then I'm gonna travel. Like, why do we have to wait till 80?
Oh, yeah.
It's so weird. There's like this expectation to just be miserable your whole life.
Isn't that awful? All th all those wasted years, and what if you don't make it to 80? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's heartbreaking, but I mean, this last year has been horrible. How many obituaries have we seen of people, Kobe Bryant, or people dying at, 45, 55, 65? I mean, I'm gonna be 60 years old this year. I'm waiting until I'm 80 to live a life I can be proud of, that I can enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's so weird. And like the funniest part is like people who actually take that want to lifestyle to heart, we kind of look at them as weirdos.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, you're not in the workforce for 30 years, miserable?" That's weird. Not saying that everyone in the workforce is miserable, but people who are, it's like they look at them as weirdos. It makes no sense.
So true. But you know what? Honestly, if you look at the research, it's very interesting that upwards of 30% of all the people working are actively disengaged. Not just a little bit, like actively disengaged. Like they are miserable.
Mm. Disengaged how? Like they just don't want to be there. They're looking at their watch the whole time, or
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, not looking for ways to, improve, not looking for professional development, not looking for ways to collaborate or be imaginative or come up with something new and wonderful, just like putting in the time, checking the box. What a terrible way to live. I mean, what a terrible way to live.
that's so sad. I know a couple people like that. It's really upsetting because this is actually my next question for you, because let's say you are in that position. You're in the workforce, you're miserable. You have this passion to be an author or a painter or something. Yeah, like let's go with painter because it's really hard to make money starting off and getting big, I guess.
Yeah.
So how do they start with this want to lifestyle? Because they're so comfortable with getting that steady income as opposed to like cutting that out and going to follow their dream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you're a painter, think about what the percentage of painters who actually make a living at it. So are you wanting to make a living at painting? That's a different story than if you are trying to live a life that brings you joy. And painting is part of that. So I would recommend that you start really evaluating your spending, because you're right, we do get really comfortable with that, regular income, even if it's something that makes us miserable. So, can you start really slashing your expenses, getting it to a point where you don't need that much money to live on? And then you can start spending more time on the passion projects, the side hustles, the things that bring you joy. Maybe you start painting and maybe you start an Etsy page and you start selling your paintings, or you start doing, note cards or something along those lines, and you start small. But now you have that outlet. Now you have that piece of you that's being realized, that you're actually seeing fruit from your labors. It makes the other side a whole lot more palatable. And then you start seeing, could I in fact make a living at this? Or is this always going to be something that just balances out the things that, I have to do because I need a job and I need a roof over my head and I need food on the table? Not every one of us is going to be able to be 100% making a living at the thing that we love. It's just not, I'm never going to be a major league pitcher. I'm never gonna be an Olympic sprinter. But you know what? I've written a couple of books. I really enjoy it. I'm starting to, get some success there, and who knows? But I still have a regular job, I still do marketing consulting on the side, and that's what pays the mortgage.
Hmm. It, something you just said. This is something that bothers me is like when parents or peers tell younger kids like you can be anything you want. It's like, okay, listen, I get that they're children and I get that you want to take it easy, but we should be a little more realistic because we're setting them up for failure pretty much. Like you can be anything you want to be if you can work hard at it. And if you have like when I was younger, people were like, you can be an Olympic swimmer. No, I can't. I'm not built to be an Olympic swimmer, no matter how hard I train. So the whole time in swimming, I was like, I'm going to be an Olympian. And then when you get to a point where you're like, oh shit, there's no way, like I can't, then they set you up for failure. So I feel like we should tell kids and young adults, like I'm a young adult too, but like, I feel like we should tell them like, if you put the work in, maybe you can be that thing. Like just I don't know what to say properly, but like just be more realistic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're really, really right. And interestingly, so I just wrote, or actually almost done writing, the companion journal that goes with the Don't Fight Mad book. And one of the exercises that I talk about in there is precisely what you're talking about. So thanks for that that softball. Um, but one of the things that I say in the journal is that I am never going to be an Olympic Taekwondo sparer. Never gonna happen. For one thing, I'm almost 60. Another thing, I have a titanium shoulder and a titanium knee. And another thing, I've just never had that degree of skill. So, one of two things could happen. I can either be devastated, I can give up on martial arts because I'm never gonna be an Olympic Taekwondo competitor. Or I can say, okay, if that's this, what are the tangential things that I can do? Well, I can own a school. I can teach children and adults how to do martial arts. I can still compete. Now, I can't spar anymore because I got, fake joints, but I'll tell you what I did last night. So, in this pandemic, and because we can't, be together right now, the association that I'm with, which is the Ernie Reyes Association, did a national tournament. And last night the black belts competed. Today all the color belts are going to be competing. And we're on Zoom calls all over the country. And so if I ask my students to compete, I always feel like I need to compete too. They need to see their master instructor out there. I had planned on being in Texas this week so I could do it at my studio because the for the master level instructors, we had to do this sword form. And so I had planned on being at my studio because I have big, tall ceilings and I could do my sword form. Well, obviously, with the, apocalypse of snow in Texas this week, I wasn't able to get back to Texas. So I'm still here in Florida. Well, I live in a tiny little cottage. You can probably see how low my ceilings are in here. There's no possible way. Hang on, I'll show you that I was going to do a sword form in
Yeah,
my
there's no way.
And so it turned out that my division was competing yesterday, California time at 6:15, which in Florida is 9:15. So it's dark. So even doing it out on my patio was too dark. So I ended up competing last night in my driveway, and my son parked his car facing, so I'm up against the garage door
Oh my.
with the headlights, so it was light enough, and I have a mat that I took out there to sit on until it was my turn, moved the mat aside, got out there, did my sword form, and then, sat and waited until it was my turn to go again. So, you just make stuff happen. So, yeah, you just have to look at life in a way that is not what's the obvious answer, because sometimes it's not obvious and sometimes you just got to do some weird stuff. So can I be an Olympic taekwondo competitor? No. Can I inspire my students by standing out on my driveway at 9:15? I'm sure my neighbors were like, who's the crazy lady out there screaming with the sword? But I'm in full uniform, black belt, and my sword. Yes, sir. At 9:15 at night. You find the stuff that you can do and you do the best that you can at it. And you can see I'm super excited about this. You find joy in the things that you can do. And I think your point about realism for our kids is so important because I don't know if you've read Angela Duckworth's book, Grit.
No.
I highly recommend it. And her point is that, we're constantly telling our kids how great they are, how beautiful they are, how smart they are, how talented they are. And we don't spend as much time telling them, you know what? Yeah, you lost that particular competition and I'm so proud of you for how hard you tried and for the way that you congratulated the winner, or the things that show resilience, the way that our kids bounce back. We don't build in grit. We just let them know how fabulous they are. And then when they're not fabulous, they fall flat on their faces, and it's no one's fault but ours. We need to teach our children that resilience and flexibility and adaptability is every bit as important as getting that gold medal.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I was having this talk with my mom a couple months ago because she was asking me, because I was so annoyed with like the pandemic, and then mental health cases were on the rise, but there were no resources out there that kind of, because they took all of the stress outlets away for
Mm.
lockdown, but then they didn't replace it with anything. So they kind of just caged people in their houses and then force fed them negative media. And then the news articles coming out were like, why are mental health cases rising? And I was just, yeah, wow, what a freaking coincidence. And I was just really pissed off. So I was talking to my mom, and we kind of got on the topic about like why people in their 20s kind of experience a lot of mental health issues, or like not even like mental illness per se, but like a lot of us experience like depressive states. And I was telling her like when because I'm 23, like when we're kids, we're told we can do anything, and we're not taught like how to deal with stress or build resilience or do these things. So when we're kind of like through high school, it's fine, like because we're still at our parents' house, we're still baby, like we're still told we're awesome, and teachers in high school like chase after you if you don't make your assignment. They're like, hey, you got to do this. You go off to uni, you go off to the workforce, you go off to college, they don't give a crap. They don't care who you are.
You pay your tuition.
Yeah,
That's all I care about.
you're a
Yeah.
dollar sign to these people. Like, and then once you get there, you're like, oh crap, like they don't think I'm the king of the world. And then like you said, you fall flat on your face. It's all about teaching them, like, listen, the world can be harsh, like it can, and there's ways to deal with it, and there's ways to deal with stress, there's ways to deal with failure, because you're going to experience it, and we just
Absolutely.
don't teach them that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a big failing, I think, in my generation, because, we wanted so much for our kids, and we wanted everything to be perfect for our kids, and we invented the whole helicopter parent thing, and your generation has suffered as a result of that, and it was not anything malign, it was definitely born of love,
Hmm.
but it was ill considered, and I think you're right. I think your kids, forgive me, you're a grown man, but your generation has suffered from that because you haven't been given the skills
Yeah.
to bounce back. And talking about mental health, I talk a lot about in the book about being depressed and having your legs kicked out from under you with life, and how martial arts in large part for me was real salvation. I getting the chance to go and work and train and change your body and change your mindset is so important, and I think we underestimate the value of a few good endorphins. And there are days when I was going through my second divorce, and it was a horrible situation. My ex-husband had cheated on me multiple times. He had run our school into the ground financially, and I mean, I was writing personal checks to make payroll just to keep the front door open.
Sounds like
I
fun.
It was miserable. It was miserable, and I was just devastated and, just emotionally so completely drained. But there were times, I would drive over to my studio, which was close to my house, 11 o'clock at night, lock the doors, turn the music up as loud as I wanted because I was in a strip mall. There was nobody else there. I would blast the music, strap on my gloves, put on the ring timer, 10 3-minute rounds, and I would just go, 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 and dripping and sweating and, just going for it. And after 30 minutes, it was like, okay, I can deal. I can get through the next day because you get that endorphin buzz and it does uplift your spirits. And I mean, I don't want to overstate the value of it. I mean, if you have genuine serious mental health issues, you need to see a professional. But if you're dealing with that kind of residual low level depression and anxiety, and you're just struggling with stuff that's coming at you, that life is just throwing at you, and you're just taking punch after punch after punch. I mean, that for me was so, so helpful.
Hmm. And for people listening who don't know, like 10 3-minute rounds is a lot of hard work. Like when I first started Muay Thai, they were like, yeah, 10 3 minutes, 3 minute, well, not 10, but like 3-minute rounds. I was like, oh, 3-minute rounds. Like that's way shorter than like a mile swim.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that's nothing. And then at like the minute mark, I was like, are we done? Because I was like drenched, I was tired, I was weak. Like
Yep.
3 minutes in fighting is a long time.
It
I
really
This is a tangent, but like I wrestled for like literally 2 weeks in high school. Like I don't even like talking about it because it's like, yeah, I wrestled for like 14 days. But we would do this thing in practice where it was like, yeah, minute long matches, like to practice get being in the match, and I was like, a minute. It's like, it's nothing, I'm a swimmer. And then you get in there and 10 seconds in, you're like, oh, I can't feel my body. It's
that's so great.
you have to, like, people listening have to understand, like, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially for people who are used to like, I go to the gym for 2 hours or whatever. Like, you know what? Come to my studio, give me 30 minutes. I will it's heavy, heavy duty, but it's great. It's great.
You get humbled quick. but, but yeah, no, I feel you. The endorphins. This is why I love sports, is because if you put your kids in sports at a young age, you don't have to force feed it to them, but like let them try out a bunch of stuff. They're
Yeah.
gonna learn about resilience. They're gonna learn about failure. They're gonna learn about how to deal with wins and not let their ego get to them. Some people, and it's just like it's a great endorphin rush.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And yeah, you got to put your kids in sport. And if they don't like it, then they don't like it, but they should at least try.
I did with my kids. They all tried, and said, you got to try something. And so, I didn't have them in swimming, but they did basketball and baseball and soccer. And then, of course, martial arts. My daughter played volleyball. One of my sons played beach volleyball. But they all found something that they loved and that they could be, that they could learn from. They could be a part of a team. They could work on themselves. Yeah, there are lessons that you learn playing sports that it's really hard to learn in an environment.
Mm-hmm. The beach volleyball is a workout on its own.
Oh, my gosh.
I was
Yeah.
I was not built for volleyball, and I was even less built for beach volleyball. Like I can't do that at all. I don't get it.
Oh, yeah, same here.
So let's go back to your book for a second. So it's called Don't Fight Mad, right?
It is, yeah.
Is it out?
I might just happen to have one I could show
Look at
you.
that. Wow.
Yeah. Yep, just launched this week. Just
Amazing.
launched this week.
First of all,
Yep.
congrats.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, the paperback is out this week. The hardcover will be coming out probably week after next. And then I have recorded an audiobook that will be coming out hopefully in late March. Audible's kind of taking their sweet time to upload stuff, but I think it'll be out end of next month. And that was really fun. My brother, back in California, he's a voiceover actor, and he's got a whole studio in his house. And so after he had seen the early copies of the book, he said, "Sis, you got to narrate this book." And I said, I don't have any voice training. I'm an executive speaker coach. I help people be public speakers, but I've never done radio or any of that kind of stuff. And he said, "Look, I've got the studio. I have all the software. I'll edit it. I'll coach you through it." And so I actually flew out to California. I was one of those people, but I was in the mask and careful and stayed at his house for 14 days. And we just knocked it out, and we recorded it in his studio. It was super, super fun. As a marketing professional, I have hired voiceover talent for years and never done it myself, had no idea how hard it is. It's really hard work. I mean, you do it for an hour, you're reading, and I'm just like, I'm toast. I'm just done, knackered. But it was really, really fun. It was great working with my younger brother because he's a super pro, and he can look at me and go, "No, no, no, do that again. You totally screwed that up." so we had a good time doing it. So yeah, so he's in the middle of editing all of that right now, and so like I said, the companion journal I'm working on, and that'll be out in a couple of weeks. And that's something that you can use with the book. There are questions at the end of each of the chapters in the section 2, and the journal kind of takes it a little bit farther.
Mm. Yeah, the whole voice acting thing. There was this TikTok of a dude, and he was like, "Do you have what it takes to be a voice actor?" And he like put these challenges up. It was like 30 seconds for each little ad, and I was like, "Really, how hard can it be? Like you're talking." Like it cannot be that hard, and I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't get it. I kept stumbling. I was like it. No one gives that credit at all. And to make an audiobook, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it took us 5 days, and we would, just record for, an hour or 2 at a time. And yeah, and and so the way he has it set up, he's got the big giant microphone and then the iPad, with the book on it in big letters so I can, just kind of scroll and read through it. And your mouth just does weird things that you're not expecting, and I'd start tripping over something and blah, 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 blah. They like, cut, do it again.
It's Isn't it great how your brain just doesn't function when you're under pressure? Isn't that perfect? Sometimes I'll be interviewing someone, I'll go, and the what? Like I'm like, I promise, I know what I'm doing. So
Well,
funny. Also, shout out to your brother for not being a yes man. That's pretty cool.
no, he's never been.
I can't stand those people. I was talking to my best friend about how I appreciate him because he calls me out on my bull. I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, because we know him, and I know people who we know a lot of rappers, from the local area, a lot of them,
Okay.
because we wanted to anyway, that's a whole different story that I don't want to put on air. But but we were, a lot of people we knew growing up turned into rappers, and they're terrible. Like, they're
Oh
really bad,
no.
but all their friends are like, "This is fire, bro! Like, keep it up. They're so good." And they're like advertising it. They're in the studio with them. They're like, "This is the best thing I've heard all year." And I'm like, you know, they don't believe that. Like, if I was in that position and I was making terrible music, I'd really want my friend to go, "Hey, this is really bad."
So funny. Oh my goodness.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not having, you can't, like, I don't know, maybe like one yes man, but when your whole crew is a bunch of yes men, you're like,
Doesn't help you.
no.
Does not help you. You know, it's you keep giving me these great segues, but there's a section in the book called "Listen to Your Coach," and that's one of the things I recommend is that you get a good coach who is going to be able to tell you the truth and who's going to support you and who's going to believe in you when you don't believe in yourself, but who is also going to tell you the truth. Don't just pick anybody.
That's a great point, because yeah, I knew swimmers growing up where when the coach didn't accommodate for them, they like freaked out, and they thought the coach should accommodate for them specifically, and it's like, can you just put your head down and train like
Yeah.
everybody else? Like, they wouldn't even be the fastest on the team. It's like, okay, listen, you got to understand, like, a coach isn't there to baby you.
No.
And
A good
it's
coach.
yeah, it's so weird how, like, when they don't baby you, it rubs people the wrong way. It's like, what did you expect?
My swim coach my swim coach, when he would get mad, he'd take kickboards, and he'd throw them like Frisbees, and he'd be, like, ducking, like
Man, yes. Oh my, some, I remember doing backstroke. I couldn't like float when we did back kick because I can't kick
uh
for whatever
oh,
reason. I don't have a core, but we'd be on our back and I'd be like sinking. And then my coach, I was like 12. She was like, "If you start sinking, I'm hitting you with a noodle." And I kept sinking, and she would have the noodle just hitting me in the face on the side of the pool.
there's parents who are listening who this and they're, like, completely appalled, and we're laughing our heads off about being abused as children.
I mean, hey, I turned out okay, I think. I don't know. Like, it teaches you, like, I don't know. Having a good coach is important. Like, the same thing with having no yes men. Like, you gotta have, like, tough love. You need tough love.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah,
So
you can't be coddled the whole time.
yeah.
So, in your book, you said there's a bunch of questions at the end of each chapter. What's one question that you would ask your younger self that would probably help them in the future, like back when you thought like, oh, this
Yeah.
isn't going to work, I don't have this want to lifestyle? What's one question that would kind of make your brain go,
That's a really great question. Let me because the book is divided into it's divided into 3 sections. So the first section is kind of memoir. It starts actually with my parents, you know, getting married and being a bicultural marriage, which was highly unusual in the 60s. And then section 2 is the self-help part. That's where all the questions are. And then the last section is really inspiration. But I would say that probably one of the questions that I would ask myself back then is, where am I doing the same thing over and over? And where are my techniques not leading to the success I long for? And then the third one I asked is, what changes am I willing to make and how big am I willing to go?
mm, I love those.
I think I was really timid. I mean, if you know anything about birth order and stuff, like I was the stereotypical firstborn girl, do everything right, get straight A's, yes ma'am, no sir, you know, do all of that kind of stuff. I was bred into that have to lifestyle. And I would love to have gone back to that young girl and said, you know, but what do you want? And
Mm,
what are you willing to risk for it?
yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was a firstborn too. It's like the trailblazer. You're like,
Yep.
you have to set the example. It's like, okay, no.
Yes.
it,
Yes. And my brother, my poor brother, because I was the super good girl and the straight A's and the captain of the swim team and all that kind of stuff. And he'd get to classes and they'd be like, "Oh, you're Cindy's brother." And he'd be like, "Oh,
Oh, that's
God,
terrible.
great."
Man, I was the opposite. It was always, "Oh, is are you like Ben, my younger brother?" They're like, "Oh, are you Ben's brother?" I'm like, "What?" I was like, "This should be the other way around. Hold up."
That's hilarious.
And then it got to a point where like I was in university and I'd go back to my hometown and they'd be like, "Are you Anna's brother?" I'm like, "She is 4 years younger than me. Like, she's my sister." Like, this is all messed up. Hold up.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
I love that advice though. Um so where can my viewers find you?
Wow, all over the place. So you can buy the book on Amazon. I'll the link and the hardcover. See, now I can't talk. The hardcover book, it will be available on Barnes and Noble. The audiobook will be available on Audible. I am on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, all of which you can find me, Cindy Villanueva.
Perfect. All over the map. I'll put all those links down below. Cindy, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely my pleasure. This was delightful. It's always great to talk to a fellow swimmer.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know. When you said that you had swam before, my eyes were like, I was like, yes, finally, someone gets it. Because I talk about swimming, I'm not kidding, every single episode because it was my whole life. Like
Yeah, yeah, it is.
yeah, exactly. You can relate a lot to swimming, and so people would be talking about like things that are not related to swimming at all, and I'm like, yeah, I can kind of relate to that because when I swam competitively, and people who listen, they message me, they're like, can you stop talking about it? Like the person has no idea what you're talking about. So to hear another swimmer come on, I'm like, yes, thank you.
But it does. It is all your, and I'll be honest, when I was having kids, I had run into my old swim coach one day and he was like, "When are you gonna get them in the water?" And I'm like, "Never," because I'm remembering my poor mother sitting on the bleachers at 5 o'clock in the morning while I'm in the pool. She's there with her book and her coffee, and then transporting me every weekend all over California for swim meets, and then training again at night for 2 more hours at night and lifting weights in the middle of the day. And I mean, everything revolved around swimming. And I just, I had 3 kids. I wasn't willing to do that. So they were off doing all the other kinds of stuff. But it's a great lifestyle, but it's a commitment for sure.
Have you have you ever tried watching not a university level or a professional, but have you tried watching an age group swim meet?
No.
I feel so bad for the parents. It's like the problem is it's so long. It's like 6 hours, and your kid swims for like 2 minutes, and
Yep.
it's just you have to stay in this super hot pool area. It's crowded. There's parents screaming. It's just the chlorine's making you go fuzzy. I'm like, I remember watching one. I was like, I feel so bad for my parents.
It's funny, my parents were so into it. Like, my mom and my dad were timekeepers, and they were judges, and they were, like, super involved with the parents on the swim team and stuff. Like, they were lifers. They were hardcore.
Yeah, no, my parents actually they were both swimmers, so it kind of helped that a little bit. Like my dad still is full into it. He loves it. So thank God for that. But I know some people's parents who are like, I don't want to be here. Like they'll watch from the window outside. They're like, I can't stay in there. It's too hot. It takes too long. Like I don't blame them. This one, this wow, we got on a tangent, but I love swimming so much. This one dad of a swimmer that I was a swimmer with in age group swimming, his dad would just go to the restaurant across the street and just be drunk the whole time because he was like, this is way more fun.
Oh my gosh. I gotta tell you, so here's another little story. When it comes to martial arts, I was like completely engrossed in what my kids were doing in every sport, but I loved watching them in martial arts. And of course, once I started, then we were all together. But I have had parents who will just, they just drop their kids off at the studio and the kids do their classes and they come and pick them up. And it's just like, you're missing so much. I mean, what a great opportunity to see your child grow and develop and learn, and then have something really fun to talk about in the car on the way home. And what we have done during the pandemic is, of course, we were closed for a long, long time. And then in August, we reopened just on Saturday mornings. And, I've got the tape on the floor. They can't touch, they're wearing masks. I can only have 8 kids in a class. We go out, we pick them up from their car, we check their temperature, the whole shebang, right? But what we've done is the parents are waiting out in the parking lot in their car, and we live stream the classes on Facebook Live. So the parents can still watch their kiddos. And so even when I'm in Florida, I'm watching my instructors teach classes on Saturday mornings. And yeah, I mean, you gotta get involved. You have to be involved.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, well, and then how do you think the kid feels when their parents like, I don't even want to bother. It's like, come on, man, be their cheerleader. Like we talked about hard, tough love and like being
Mhm.
realistic, but if they're in something and they want to be in it, like you got to be their cheerleader.
Absolutely. And my kids are 40, 37, 34, and 20. And I talk to them every week. I mean, several times a week. My 20-year-old actually works for me. He's one of my top instructors at the studio. He's a third-degree black belt, and he competed last night too. It was awesome. But I mean, I am their biggest cheerleader, and they're my biggest cheerleader. Like, it's not like some weird, creepy symbiotic kind of thing. Like, we just genuinely love each other and support each other. We tell each other the truth. But, I built those relationships with them when they were little. And man, parents, I know they get busy and they've got work and they've got other commitments and everything. But you know what? I tell everybody I know who has little kids, don't blink. Because I will tell you, my oldest son turned 37 last month, and I looked at him and I was like, yesterday I dropped you off in kindergarten. I'm sure of it. I'm absolutely sure of it. So don't blink, because before you know it, it's gone. And those moments are never going to be replicated. And it's not just for the kids, it's for the parents too. The joy that I get parenting my kids from babies till adulthood, nothing compares. Absolutely nothing compares.
Yeah, exactly. This pandemic has made me convinced that time isn't a thing. Like when I was in like I always forget it's February. I'm mentally still in February of 2020, like before this whole thing started. Like I literally, if I didn't have an agenda, I'd just be kind of floating into nothingness. Like I have no concept of time. So this idea that time really does go like that, it's true. It really it blink and you miss it. All the veteran like athletes will tell you that when you start off, they're like,
Yeah.
enjoy it while it lasts. Like when I first got to uni, they're like, enjoy these 4 years. It's because it's gonna go quick. And I was like, man, shut up. Like 4 years is so long. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be the longest 4 years ever. I remember standing on the pool deck because I was injured for the last meet, which kind of sucked. But
Mm.
I remember standing on the pool deck watching my team race, and I was like, wow, this is it. And it was like I like mentally was still in that conference room where I was like, man, shut up. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It goes like a blip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, gotta
So
enjoy it while you can.
so enjoy it, dive in, take care of yourself, do the things you love, spend the time on the things that have to be done, but really concentrate on wanting, more for yourself and believing that you deserve more.
Hmm.
Yeah, and thanks so much for the opportunity to talk about my book and to talk about life. I really, really enjoyed this.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
To all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching another episode of my show. If you want more episodes of the H Panel, the button's going to be right here. If you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, it'll be right down below. Please like, comment, share, give 5 stars. Let's keep this conversation going, guys, all right? I'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.